Buffalo Memorial Auditorium was built in 1940 as a Depression-era civic monument, physically rebuilt for the NHL 3 decades later by lifting its 2,200-ton roof and turned into one of hockey's loudest and strangest home rinks. The ice was undersized, the boards moved. A hidden kick behind the dasher could redirect a puck into the slot. During the 1975 Stanley Cup Final, heat filled the building with fog while a bat circled above the players. Yet the arena that seemed inseparable from Buffalo eventually became too old for Major League economics. Closed in 1996, remained frozen in time for 13 years, and was demolished. Today, people skate across the same ground at Canalside with a marker showing where center ice once stood. Long before the Buffalo Sabres existed, the city needed a modern indoor gathering place. Buffalo's Broadway Auditorium had been serving the community since 1913, but by the late 1930s, it was outdated. City leaders pursued a new venue during an era when federal public works spending was reshaping American cities. In June 1938, Buffalo applied to the Public Works Administration for help funding the project. A federal grant of $1.2 million was approved that October, and construction began on November 30th, 1939. The location carried its own history. The building rose near the foot of Main Street, where the Erie Canal and Maine-Hamburg Canal had once met. Buffalo had grown into a major commercial city through that waterfront, but the district had declined as canal traffic disappeared and transportation patterns changed. The new auditorium was expected to pull people back toward the inner harbor. Even before it opened, local coverage treated the project as a visible sign that the lower end of downtown could become active again. Architects Green and James designed a broad, heavy structure measuring approximately 422 feet by 262 feet. It was built for about $2.7 million and presented with the formality expected of a public monument. Its pale stone exterior, tall entrance openings, and sculptural details made it appear closer to a civic hall than a modern sports arena. The name also carried a specific purpose. Memorial Auditorium was dedicated to those who had died in World War I, placing remembrance alongside entertainment from the beginning. Opening ceremonies were held on October 14, 1940. A parade and luncheon drew thousands of people, including officials from communities across Western New York. The original seating bowl contained 12,280 fixed seats in red, blue, and gray, with additional floor seating available for other events. Its first day included a presidential campaign rally for Wendell Willkie. During its first year, the building attracted roughly 1.3 million visitors through political gatherings, sports, circuses, exhibitions, roller skating, auto shows, and other civic events. Hockey quickly became central to the building. The Buffalo Bisons joined the American Hockey League when the Aud opened and established a strong professional tradition decades before the NHL arrived. Buffalo won Calder Cups in 1943, 1944, and 1946, then added championships in 1963 and 1970. The final title was a fitting handoff. The Bisons swept Springfield in the 1970 Calder Cup Final, then ceased operations because Buffalo's new NHL franchise was about to take over the market. The Aud also became a major college basketball venue. Canisius, Niagara, and St. Bonaventure brought large crowds into the building, and the rivalries among those schools often dominated the winter calendar. Professional basketball appeared briefly in the 1940s and returned on a larger scale with the NBA's Buffalo Braves in 1970. Concerts, boxing, wrestling, political rallies, and touring productions filled dates between games. For much of its early life, the Aud functioned as Buffalo's indoor town square. For Buffalo, the Sabres' arrival was also a statement about the city's place in Major League sports. The franchise entered the NHL during the league's rapid expansion beyond its traditional markets. Buffalo already had deep hockey support through the Bisons, but NHL membership placed the city on the same schedule as Montreal, Toronto, Boston, and New York. The Aud became the stage where that new identity was tested. Crowds did not need years to understand the sport or learn the rhythms of a season. The building inherited an audience that already treated hockey as part of local life. The NHL changed the building more dramatically than any previous tenant. Seymour and Northrop Knox secured an expansion franchise for Buffalo beginning in the 1970-71 season. The Sabres arrived alongside the Braves, creating immediate pressure on a 30-year-old arena that had never been designed for the operational and seating demands of two modern Major League teams. Buffalo could either replace the building or perform a structural intervention that bordered on the unbelievable. The city chose the intervention. An $8.7 million project raised the arena's 2,200-ton roof by 24 feet, creating enough vertical space for another seating level. The new upper deck became known as the Oranges, joining the gold, red, and blue sections below it. Escalators, stairways, exits, and a new scoreboard were added. Seating capacity increased in stages, eventually reaching 16,433 for hockey, before accessibility modifications reduced it to 16,325 in 1990. Raising the roof changed the odd's silhouette, but it preserved the steep, enclosed character of the seating bowl. The upper rows climbed sharply instead of spreading far away from the rink. From the ice, the audience appeared stacked almost vertically. From the Oranges, fans looked down at an angle that could feel alarming to anyone uncomfortable with heights. That geometry became one of the building's greatest strengths. Even spectators in inexpensive seats remained visually connected to the game. Sharing the arena was never simple. The Sabres, Braves, and major college programs all wanted desirable winter dates, while concerts and touring shows remained important revenue sources. Conversions had to be completed quickly, and schedules were negotiated around several organizations with competing priorities. The Braves remained through 1978 before the franchise moved to San Diego, eventually becoming the Los Angeles Clippers. Hockey became the dominant major league tenant, although the arena continued to host indoor soccer, lacrosse, and other sports. The Buffalo Bandits began playing there in 1992 and immediately added championship nights to the building's final era. The arrangement also created a social map that Buffalo fans understood immediately. People did not simply sit in the lower bowl or upper deck. They sat in the golds, reds, blues, or oranges. The colors became shorthand for price, elevation, atmosphere, and identity. Regulars returned to the same sections and often the same seats, allowing players to recognize faces near the benches and glass. The arena felt less anonymous than the larger multi-purpose buildings emerging across North America. The ice surface added another layer. NHL regulation size was 200 feet by 85 feet, but the odds rink was several feet shorter and may also have been slightly narrower. Players remembered dimensions around 194 or 195 feet long. The reduced space compressed the game. Forecheckers arrived sooner, defenders had less time to move the puck, and collisions developed quickly. Buffalo learned to operate in traffic at home, then gained extra room when playing on regulation ice elsewhere. The boards and glass behaved differently as well. Former Sabres described the glass as flexible enough to sway dramatically when a player was checked into it. Instead of stopping the body immediately, it absorbed part of the impact and pushed the player back toward the ice. One section of the dasher boards became especially notorious. Equipment staff member Ensel "Porky" Palmer could reportedly press or kick the board outward as the puck traveled behind the net, changing its path and sending it toward the front. The home facilities were equally old-fashioned. Players crossed exposed areas in Buffalo's snow and slush to enter the arena. The dressing room was small, and a narrow spiral staircase led to the team's modest weight area. Former players recalled poor ventilation, cramped conditions, and even rats finding their way through openings in a concrete wall. These details would be unacceptable in a current NHL building, but they contributed to the sense that the odd belonged to a rougher, less polished period of professional hockey. The Sabres gave that environment a team capable of turning atmosphere into pressure. Gilbert Perreault became the franchise's first superstar. Rick Martin and René Robert joined him to form the French Connection, one of the most celebrated forward lines of the 1970s. The combination of speed, skill, and crowd energy made home games feel urgent. Buffalo reached the playoffs in its third season and advanced to the Stanley Cup Final in 1975, only 5 years after entering the league. Game 3 against the Philadelphia Flyers produced the defining image of the odd. Buffalo was unusually warm on May 20th, 1975, with the outdoor temperature reaching the low 80s. The packed building lacked adequate air conditioning, and the temperature inside climbed close to 90 degrees. Warm, humid air met the ice and created thick fog. Visibility became so poor that the game was repeatedly stopped. Arena workers and players skated with towels in attempts to move the fog, only for it to reform elsewhere. Then, a bat appeared above the rink. The crowd tracked it through the haze until Sabres forward Jim Lorentz struck it with his stick and knocked it to the ice. Philadelphia's Rick McLeish removed his glove, picked it up, and carried it away. The game itself remained close. Buffalo erased an early deficit and forced overtime. With 1 minute 31 seconds left in the extra period, René Robert fired from a difficult angle and beat Bernie Parent through the fog, giving the Sabres a 5-4 victory. Buffalo won Game 4 at the Odd to tie the series, but Philadelphia captured the next 2 games and the Stanley Cup. The Sabres did not return to the final while playing in the building. Still, the Fog game fixed the Odd in hockey history. It combined nearly every characteristic associated with the arena: heat, inadequate systems, an intense crowd, strange physical conditions, and a game dramatic enough to survive the chaos around it. The building remained productive through changing eras of Sabres hockey. Perreault scored his 500th career goal there in 1986, becoming the first and still only player to reach that number entirely as a Sabre. The 1992-93 season brought one of the most explosive offensive pairings in franchise history. Pat LaFontaine recorded 148 points, while Alexander Mogilny scored 76 goals in 77 games. Both totals remain Buffalo's single-season records. That spring also produced Brad May's overtime goal against Boston, followed by Rick Jeanneret's famous Mayday call. 1 year later, Dominik Hasek delivered an extraordinary performance against New Jersey in Game 6 of the 1994 playoffs. He stopped 70 shots in a 4-overtime shutout before Dave Hannon scored the winner. Hasek won the Vezina Trophy in both 1994 and 1995, making the final years of the Odd home to the beginning of his rise as one of hockey's greatest goaltenders. By then, affection could not hide the building's limitations. The Odd had narrow concourses, outdated concessions, limited premium space, small dressing rooms, and systems that had been adapted repeatedly rather than designed for contemporary use. Accessibility improvements, elevators, and air conditioning were added in a 1990 renovation, but the project was a holding action. The Sabres ownership argued that the franchise required a new arena for long-term financial stability. Arena economics had changed. New buildings generated revenue through suites, club seating, sponsorship areas, larger concessions, and modern event operations. The Odd had little room to expand without another expensive reconstruction. The same closeness that created its atmosphere also restricted circulation and commercial space. Buffalo faced a familiar choice: preserve a beloved building with serious constraints, or construct a replacement that could compete with the rest of the league. The city and team moved forward with a new arena immediately south of the Odd. Marine Midland Arena was built close enough that the two structures briefly stood together, one representing Buffalo's established hockey identity and the other its future. The Sabres played their last official game at the Odd on April 14, 1996, defeating the Hartford Whalers 4-1. Michael Pekka scored the final goal recorded in competition. After the game, the lights were lowered, and players from different generations took ceremonial laps. Captain Pat LaFontaine approached the crease and tapped a puck into the net as the symbolic final goal. The moment separated the statistical ending from the emotional one. The building had opened with a civic celebration in 1940 and ended its NHL life with the people who had filled it watching familiar players circle the same ice one last time. The Sabres moved into Marine Midland Arena for the 1996-97 season, but the Odd did not disappear immediately. It remained standing beside the new building, closed and largely without utilities. For a time, its interior looked almost suspended. The scoreboard still hung above center ice. Advertising remained on the boards from the final Sabres game. Seats stayed in place, even as water damage, vandalism, and neglect gradually took hold. Several reuse ideas appeared, most prominently proposals connected to Bass Pro Shops. None produced a workable future for the structure. The building contained asbestos and required substantial remediation. Its layout was difficult to convert, and maintaining an empty arena served no clear public purpose. In 2007, the property was transferred to the Erie Canal Harbor Development Corporation for $1, clearing the way for environmental work and demolition. Salvage crews removed seats, decorative flag holders, stone eagles, and other pieces before demolition. 10 stainless steel tanks associated with the arena's cooling system were reused at Shea's Performing Arts Center. A copper time capsule placed during construction was recovered and opened at the farewell ceremony in June 2009. Inside were 1939 newspapers and original odd blueprints, physical records from the moment Buffalo had begun building the arena 70 years earlier. Demolition started in early 2009. The front inscription came down in February, and the final structural pieces were removed by early July. For many fans, the delay between closure and demolition made the loss feel prolonged. The Aud had spent 13 years, visible but inaccessible, close enough to trigger memories while steadily deteriorating. Its removal ended the possibility of preservation, but it also allowed the waterfront plan to proceed. The site was reorganized around Buffalo's canal history. Interpretive canals following portions of the former Erie Canal and Hamburg Canal routes opened in 2014. During winter, they become a large outdoor skating area. A marker identifies the former location of center ice inside Memorial Auditorium. The effect is unusually direct. People can skate over the footprint of a demolished NHL arena while also moving through a reconstructed version of the waterways that existed before the arena was built. That layering gives the Aud a different afterlife from many demolished sports venues. The land moved from Canal Junction to Civic Arena to public waterfront, and each phase remains legible. Nearby, Lecom Harbor Center contains 2 ice rinks and training facilities, while the Sabres continue playing across the street at the arena now called Key Bank Center. Hockey never left the district. It spread into new buildings and returned outdoors on the old footprint. The Aud survives through details that modern arenas rarely reproduce. The oranges rising steeply above the rink, the smaller ice, moving glass, improvised facilities, and the sense that the audience was hanging over the players. Its faults were real and eventually decisive. So was its effect on Buffalo hockey. The building lasted 56 years as an active venue, housed the Sabres for 26 seasons, and stood long enough to connect the AHL Bisons, the French Connection, the Fog Game, Perreault, LaFontaine, Mogilny, and Hasek within one address. There is no arena at 140 Main Street now. There are canals, bridges, walkways, winter ice, and a mark beneath the skates showing where the red line once crossed the building. That marker is small compared with the structure that occupied the block, but it places the memory precisely. The Aud is gone, yet Buffalo can still stand at center ice.